session. Awesome. So I think it's a good time to jump and give the word to Dimitrie to talk about his issue. And then if, because I feel like we will have some time left, if anyone wants to pick up any other topic or just discuss something else, let's use the time as well, or just drop off earlier. Dimitrie.
Yeah, I just, I put this in here. There weren't too many items yet, so at least we have something to talk about. And I wanted your advice and, you know, for myself to be prepared as best as possible for an upcoming meeting later this week. So to give you the gist of it, if you want the full gist, you can watch the UX showcase edition I did not so long ago, where I go over, you know, past researches and experience maps and all those kind of things. And it leads up to this exploration into setting up GitLab-CI. So this exploration, you know, I'm going to ideate, I'm going to prioritize, etc., cross-functionally along with product management and engineering. And later this week, I'll have, you know, the first real kickoff meeting involving engineering, you know, to get them aligned, to get them a little bit more of a background story as to what effort has gone into this. And above all, to get their input as well into this exploration, is to see, you know, how can we best set up the user for, you know, setting up GitLab-CI. And it's a North Star approach what we'll be doing here. So we're gonna, you know, have the user setting up GitLab-CI in an ideal way, and we're gonna iterate our way towards that. For some reason, I don't know what has changed, but there was like this noise and now it's gone. So it feels like my audio is disconnected, but as none of you are speaking, it seems it's still working. So good for me. Anyway, the first step that I did in this is create this storyboard. I've also been discussing this within this UX showcase. I'll be showing you around a little bit. So I'll be sharing my screen a little bit, but what I would like to get out of this is, you know, getting some advice from you all as to, you know, how you approach certain similar efforts, and perhaps we can also go over the, you know, setting up GitLab-CI flow. We're all familiar with it, and, you know, perhaps I've missed a thing or two. So let me share my screen, and then we can go from there. All right, let's see that I need to update my system preferences, and give me a second. It takes a little bit longer than normal.
Right, because you have your new machine, right? Works good?
Exactly. It works as a charm.
Good to hear. Lori, did you have your MacBook back?
Yes, it came yesterday at 11:30 in the morning. So I spent the rest of the day setting it back up again.
I need to briefly quit Zoom in order to get this working. So
to share it. Yeah, that was me yesterday.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So we have some time to quickly discuss something else. If anyone has anything interesting to share. Oh, no, there is Dimitrie. That was fast.
Your computer, faster things, right? All right, we should be set to go. Let me see. All right, so this is a story map. I need to get a little bit back into it because it's been, you know, Christmas holidays for me as well. But basically, there are 4 themes. It's, you know, learning about the availability of GitLab-CI. That's, you know, going a little bit into the marketing side of it. So less relevant, I would say, to the experience I'm trying to improve, but still interesting to at least list. Then we have the activation of CI, right? Like if the project didn't start out at all, it needs to activate CI in order to get forward. Then it's about validating that initial CI configuration, or even evaluating, you know, the adjusted configuration. That brings us, you know, back to the last point, that's adjustment, which is, I would say, along with validation, the most frequently exercised part of setting up GitLab-CI, because often what currently happens is you activate GitLab-CI in some way and it fails. welcome to GitLab, where your CI configuration fails 9 out of 10 times when setting up GitLab-CI. And you validate and adjust, you validate and adjust, and you validate and adjust, and on and on and on until you get it right and you're finally happy you have a green pipeline. So the idea for us now is to fix that and get, activating CI, get a green pipeline immediately and being positively reinforced to, to do some additional things and perhaps have some suggestions here. So to briefly go into this, you create a config, you detail your requirements inside of that config, right? And already put some in things here. So a big theme with this, ideal way of setting up GitLab user for setting up GitLab-CI is guiding them along the way. And for us to do that, we're going to suggest things. So think of suggesting fixes for existing configuration errors, or perhaps even when something is going well, we can suggest the user based on the existing project configuration. Hey, perhaps this is a thing for you to do. We want to lint your JavaScript, or want to lint your Python files for best practices. But there's a lot more to do there. For example, for suggesting fixes to existing CI configuration, we've all had that. You go back to your pipelines table, and your CI YAML was invalid. Why don't we offer the user the ability to immediately lint that, or go back to the linting, paste it in there, automate that suggestion, or even create a merge request upon a merge request, which fixes that. We can do a lot of automation there along with suggestion. You read the status, you monitor progression, you read the build details if needed, often done when users are less confident. Analyze the result, discuss the result with peers. That is also a suggestion. How can we make that process a little bit easier? Currently, it's not possible to really discuss a specific job error. Just some ideas thrown in there. And then you think of the improvement or get a suggestion again. So what I wonder about here is, if you do an exploration, and what I'm considering doing is, walk with engineering and product management across this flow, and then consider all the green items here, which are, basic suggestions as to, ideas how to improve those steps. So these three you see here would be, suggestions to improve this. These would be for this, etc. Is this the way you would go about this, or is there, I'm looking for, to compare this kind of an approach with other people who have done the same thing.
This looks very similar to what I have been doing with testing, like kind of like going through like that, creating kind of like those major topics, and then like, kind of like that affinity, I don't know, it's kind of like almost like an affinity diagram of like things that you need to complete to like improve in those areas. So I think it's similar to what we have been doing. It's definitely not the same, but I think it's kind of like, we also have our journey, and then like we kind of like go through the journey of the feature, and we say like, okay, this is the things that we need to like MVC, nice to have, like must haves, like I think. So I actually like this approach a lot, because you already kind of like paint the whole picture. So it's very clear. I mean, if the feedback that you're seeking for is like, is this good? I really like it. Yeah, I think I will definitely use this. If you can share the template with me.
The link is in the document, so you can find it there. And there's a link to a similar approach inside the product development workflow, which kind of outlines storyboarding. But I was perhaps an additional question towards that. Thanks, by the way. As how do you make sure you don't miss anything, or how do you get extra influences in there apart from the cross-functional team members? Just brain dumping here, and you see what can I come up with extra, because there might be steps here that that are not in between yet, or that that I'm missing yet, but might be important. Competitive analysis might be something that I would think of, but at the same time I want to move forward and get something out of this, instead of eternally pondering about, you know, what could have been.
I don't know. It seems to me that you're gonna miss things even if you don't want to, because like it's such a complex. I mean, this is a massive thing, you know, like CI configuration, like you know, like setting up your CI and activating your CI, all this stuff, like getting the results from your CI, all that stuff is massive, you know. So there's gonna be small things that you're gonna miss, and I think that's okay. I think I think you really did a good job of like doing like the initial scaffold of like the things that like need to be considered, and I think it's just moving forward and like maybe socializing this with other people that you think are relevant. I mean, us is like a start. I honestly think that it's very complete, but I think as you socialize this a little bit more, maybe people are gonna be like, oh, maybe think about this or that, you know. I don't know, but it looks very complete to me.
Perhaps suggestions that, you know, talking about testing and runner, talking about, you know, release management, but also feature flags and such things that you would think of, that if setting up GitLab-CI will become easier, then this certainly will be a part of that. And if so,
yeah,
bring it on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you're right about that. I think that.
You mean dependencies with other stages, right, Dimitri?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm thinking here, as we are, you know, divided across the different stage groups. You know, there are opportunities that will come out of this that will have an effect on release and runner, and etc.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that might, you know, influence, you know, oh, I forgot this step or something like that, or hey, this is an idea for a potential improvement. Is there a shortcut you would like users to take when setting up a GitLab-CI to make release management more clear in the beginning? Or can we suggest, or do you suggest that we have certain tests be you know, suggested first to them, for example, linting versus unit tests, or vice versa, or something like that? And just, you know, if we put them all on this board, I'll have some additional material to work with in the meeting next upcoming this week.
Yeah.
How would you like to? I mean, I think that's a great idea, but how would you like that to be like added into this, like breaking what you have right now? Because it seems that like.
Perhaps we can give me a second. I can put this here.
Yeah.
If we can put them in this square,
Well,
then,
and then like we can like room down the thing, and then yeah, that makes sense.
So if we would say release management here, we have feature flags. We can have additional ones, right? Runner and tests. What would be if you know, taking this a little bit on further than just reviewing, if everybody could, you know, enter this view, this story map mural board, and just put 1 to 3 ideas of things where they think would be the best opportunities of improvement when setting up GitLab-CI for their stage groups. Perhaps we have something to work with. If you have a better idea, I'm all ears, of course.
I think it's great to give everyone possibility to visit this board and read through to better understand like the flow that you presented there and all the steps. So yeah, maybe if we will finish this meeting like 20 minutes earlier, maybe people can use those 20 minutes to give you feedback here and provide suggestions and inputs.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And a lot of this is like, a lot of these are the problems that are facing, like you were saying, these are the problems, right? Not just CI. This is the problem with pages. This is the problem with the CD side of things. We actually just had a meeting recently that I think we recorded. But basically we're talking about the kind of the visual editor, making the web ID, that kind of column there, all of that stuff is what we're talking about as needed solutions. So it's not really useful to you in adding that new ideas here, but can validate that these things are coming up in other things, and these are the kind of things that we are seeing that we need in other areas as well. So I guess 2 points there. One, validation. Yes, I think a lot of these are correct, and maybe we can weight some of these as needed in other items as well. But then also, like, I think we need to start kind of collaborating. That's on our to-do list that was out of that meeting, was we need to talk to Dimitrie and say where he's at and what's his progress on this, because there's a desire in other stage groups to touch a lot of these areas, but you know, obviously don't want to duplicate work. And so I think collaboration is a good thing there.
Yeah, that aligns a little with my thinking of how to set this up, because I feel that a lot of the places where, you know, for example, I wanted to zoom in, where suggestions are going to become making sense if, let me see, where did I get a system suggestion for something new. So currently when you create your CI configuration, right, you have to write it up, you have some kind of a templating solution, but that's it. It's super rigid, right? It doesn't allow the user to, for example, add a little piece of information within their GitLab-CI. We don't have a graphical user interface to guide the user throughout the process of creating their CI, apart from, you know, the raw text, etc. And I would say, or what I expect here, you know, looking at GitHub Actions being a good example there, it would basically allow us to create a framework where we can all extend such things upon. You know, hey, do you want to create pages? We have this suggestion here, or just add this GitLab pages block and it will do the rest for you. We just need this little piece of information to which domain it's going to point to, and bam, you have GitLab pages set up for you. Such things I think should become possible, but it's a very far away North Star. Yeah. So, you know, I think those are the most fun to ideate upon.
Yeah. So to speak a little less kind of up in the clouds, that is specifically the one that seems to keep coming up, is the templating. You know, like right now you choose your one template when you first create your YAML file, and if you want to choose a new template, it completely blows away the other one. And if we had the ability to kind of, you know, templates as like snippets, right? You could add things to the template, even if it was just simply like the ability to see them in that same page. Seems like it would go miles to be able to help people to understand how to do this, because the alternative right now is digging through documentation and hoping you find a snippet in there and copy and pasting that one. So I think templates and snippets is a huge driver here. And it seems very North Star-y, but it doesn't, right? We have all this code. We're really talking about like a searchable widget that lives next to the code editor. You know, it doesn't seem undoable to me.
Let me see, searchable code widget. Yeah, that kind of aligns with my thinking as well. Perhaps it's, you know, an iterative way to get us to that, you know, GUI way of doing things. At the same time, and I do know that we're having a new stage group set up that is going to look specifically at CI onboarding. So, you know, there is the importance that it is, you know, it's super important. We're creating a separate stage group for it. So this is perhaps the pre-work being done for that stage group. And I think that the more we do here, the better they are set up. But if that is the case, it means that, you know, the beginning user or user that are less familiar with CI from GitLab are a really important target audience where we should focus on. And that hasn't always been as clear in the past, where we are thinking, oh, but a DevOps engineer or a software developer from a big enterprise customer, they should already have some knowledge and they should be able to figure it out. I think now we're in this position where we can no longer say that is true, and that we're actually missing customers based on competitive products who do it better than us in terms of accessibility and those kind of things. So. Yeah, I see a way forward with snippets and templating for sure. What about you, Rihanna? I haven't heard her yet.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't eat anything today, so I'm trying to follow the conversation mostly. But yeah, I think with the snippets and the helpers in the UI, we also have the discussions with the Jackie, our PM, for release. And she made a good point that although we want to make things easier, we want to automate as much as we can. There's also a lot of the customers, right, that they still want to manually perform these actions, like I don't know, government agencies, banks, etc. So I think that's a point to keep in mind, that we want to yes, provide the automation and work with the snippets, but also make sure that we are not closing the gap too much. So that's just a comment on this point.
Yeah, I agree there. How I think about it, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that you can have if you set up a web application, right, you have your API and you build one interface upon it that uses that API to control it. But you can then also at the same time build a second UI that uses that same API in a different way to get to the same result. So I would say that the GUI should in some way have the GitLab-CI YAML as its API to get the same things done. But at the same time, not have DreamWorks as an example there. That's what's called DreamWorks, right? That old application from Adobe that you could write web applications with or something like that, but produce bad code.
What do you mean old application? I still use it. Just kidding.
All right, I'll stop sharing my screen, by the way.
So I was playing with these last week a lot. Yeah, and I think the most frustrating part for me was like generating errors on the configuration, and then like there's kind of like there's like something that tells you like, oh, you have an error, right? You have absolutely no idea what's the error. Like I think that was the most frustrating part, because like, I mean, I'm just saying this because I was thinking about all the things that you were going through, and like I was thinking, what was the most frustrating thing? That one thing that I think should really be like an area of focus was like working on the YAML file, getting errors and don't even know like how to fix them, because like the error is not useful enough. It's like, oh, you have an error, okay, and because we don't have linting, then like that's another thing. Like sometimes the errors were like very vague, they don't give you like a line or anything. So I don't know, I feel that if I was frustrated with that and I was like being like seeing it through the eyes of GitLab as a GitLab employee, I can imagine like sometimes people who are like just getting started with these, how do they feel about it? So my 2 cents are like, if I was gonna focus on something, like, is that particular moment in which you're creating the YAML file. I think it's too rough, especially for something that should be like way more mature right now, Just a random thought that I had while you guys were talking.
One thing that I do see missing from this is I don't really know how to reword it as a story. map, but you were hitting on it a little bit with the Dreamweaver thing. Is the conversation always comes up of, are we going to put that as an option that you set in the YAML file, or is that going to go in the UI? So there's always that debate back and forth. So maybe the story map part of it is a user now has to remember, like, do I set this in the YAML file or do I set this in the UI? So something about determining, you know, where this thing is set, because there's some things, you know, and that's a constant moving barometer of making those decisions. I feel like every time it comes up, it's a discussion, and it's always like a 60-40 kind of situation where, you know, it might make sense in the YAML file, but it might make sense as a UI element. So,
or maybe both at the same time, depends on the user.
Right, and then there's that. That's when it starts getting enticing to start thinking about, start talking about breaking down that wall between those two. But then there's that whole host of problems that are introduced once you do that as well. So.
Yeah, didn't we talk about that, Mike? About, you know, having some kind of like a fluid place that lives not in one of either places, but is accessible through both, or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal state, right? I mean, there will always be coders that want to code, and there will always be the rest of the planet that wants a UI and clicking buttons and making it easy. And until we can reconcile that somehow, we'll always be upsetting, you know, X percentage of people. To me, the biggest problem with that, with going the UI route, is the idea that the YAML file is, you know, it's checked in as part of your code, and it lives with your code. And when you roll back, you can roll back the YAML file too. And then how does that work if you're in the UI? It gets very interesting there.
I have thought about these, and I don't think there's I don't think those concepts are like separate, to be honest, because like if you have a UI where you're building your configuration, then real time it should be building a file, right? So you should be able to switch back and forth, you know, like they should be able, whatever the UI is doing, it should be able to be reading from an actual file. You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does. If you think about it from the UI standpoint, right? If you go in and you're going to use the visual editor, and you know, you take the path that you get there, you're going to be on whatever branch you're on. Go to that file to launch that editor. So then that editor could be synced up with wherever that branch is currently at. So maybe it's not a problem.
But no, I understand what you're saying. It's mostly like whatever we do, it should be like good for both personas, for lack of a better term. Like if you want to like work on a GUI, you should be able to do it. If you want to work on code, you should be able to do it. And like it should be as easy in both case scenarios, you know?
Right. And there are paradigms for this, you know, the world has gone to a markdown editing world, and that's essentially what we're talking about. YAML and markdown are not that far apart, and there are GUIs for markdown, and context switching between the two work. So it seems like we could make it work there.
Yeah, we already kind of do that a little bit, even in GitLab, when you like are doing like markdown and you preview it, you know, it's almost kind of like the same mental model a little bit, like going back between like writing markdown and previewing the markdown.
Did we ever like I don't know, any extensive user research on that? Like, you know, trying to deep dive into more like analysis of the user data, user needs, what type of personas need one or another solution, what are the challenges, etc.
I'm unsure what exactly. I know you said it quite clearly, but if you're pointing into the direction of like, has there been, you know, done extensive research in the need for a GUI interface to edit GitLab-CI YAML? there hasn't been done so. And I would wonder, like, how would you figure out if there's, you know, a specific need for such a thing if it does not exist yet? You know, like, is this because only there's a competitor that has it, or, you know, I would say there is enough evidence that, you know, it is quite tough to set GitLab-CI YAML, but it doesn't point specifically into the solution direction of a GUI interface that solves that problem.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's about multiple factors, I feel. Competition is interesting, but also in the first place, it's like learning about the user needs from different personas, technical user, less technical users, who is interacting with the YAML, you know, if they're interacting, in what way do they prefer, you know, what works, what doesn't. It's, yeah, this is why I'm asking. It sounds like it's a really multi-dimensional question, so would be interesting to dive deeper into that and maybe make some deeper research on that. I remember we've been also discussing this with my previous company, similar questions, and this was always like a debate, like we are talking as well, but some of the questions is nice to tackle directly with people who will be using that. Or will not be using, and why they would, for example, prefer UI over CLI or the other way around. You know.
I have seen like 3 or 4 issues, that suggest like a visual editor or like an interactive editor. And there's one that it's super long, like it has like a lot of comments and screenshots from people, and people say you should do it this way, and then they put like Dimitrie also has like commented in that one, I think.
Yeah, the original one is a moonshot issue created, you know, I believe even before I started out at GitLab. And it's been one of those original moonshot issues where the idea has been thought of, you know, a while ago, but at the same time, we haven't ever gotten to it, to prioritize it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe we can collect those issues in one and just like do a debrief there. It's interesting, you know, if that's like, for example, 4 out of 100 users, or maybe there are much more. You know, like, so basically, do we even need to invest time into even talking about that or investigating? Is this something important for business to do or not? So all of those questions are really interesting. Because it sounds like we're discussing this already second time, indeed, Dimitri, like you mentioned. It seems like we're coming back and forth. So it would be interesting to estimate the need for that.
Sounds good. Still, it's nice that out of this discussion, some good ideas are coming up. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
There's there's another thing that I just remember when GitHub launched Actions. There was a thread in Hacker News, and I remember seeing comments there that were like, "Oh, I wish GitLab had this. This is pretty cool. I wish that there was like a way, like a UI to build pipelines and blah blah blah." So maybe we should just find that as another kind of like data point, because I remember seeing a lot of those comments, and that was an active thread.
Good point.
I always find it a little bit, you know, strange to be able to gather such different qualitative sources and then just, you know, pile them together as a piece of evidence for the need for something. Like, is there a better way to perhaps compare the results from those different kind of sources and, you know, hey, this thing points into this, you know, percentage of need. I know this is pretty vague, but this percentage of need for this specific kind of direction, while this other source suggests, you know, even better or even more. So they are comparable. That's what I'm pointing at.
Yeah, my first instinct was, well, let's go ask some people who use it to see what they think about it. Just because GitHub put it out there and people are like, oh my God, it's amazing, doesn't actually mean they're 1, using it, 2, like it, and 3, it does what it needs to do for them. So that's always what I caution my product managers with all the time. Like, just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean that they're doing it well. It doesn't mean that we can't actually jump ahead of them and do it completely different and better. But we have to find out what that would be.
Exactly, Lori. Good point. Yeah, yeah. And making that, moving that into the UI will be quite a huge effort. And the question is, does it worth it or not? But all of this can be answered with some investigation, I guess.
I just wanted to point out something else. It's related, perhaps like it's another need. But when I was playing with this last week, I think one thing that really frustrated me was the fact that I was writing the YAML and I couldn't preview how the pipeline is gonna look, you know? So I only know how the pipeline is gonna look until I save it and I try to run it, and then I see, oh, actually the stage is here. Actually the jobs are running under this stage, you know? Although I kind of like, I'm trying to like build that pipeline in my head, I never get like a visual picture of how the pipeline looks until I run it. And I think it ties back to this, you know, like I was trying to like build it mentally and I never had a chance to see how it looks. So maybe the MVC for this, I don't know, maybe this is just like a random idea. The MVC for this is just at least seeing like as you're writing the YAML, how it's gonna look like, you know, because I don't think there's, I think that was super frustrating too. Not seeing how the final version of the pipeline is gonna look like.
It has been something that I have been slightly involved with. There was, I'm wondering who it was, but there were two developers that were working on a proof of concept that eventually turned out to be too difficult to really pull off for exactly this thing. So there is the need with developers to, you know, make it easier and get feedback earlier on their CI configuration while editing. Yes, I truly think there's an an opportunity there. At the same time, you know, opening can of worms like, all right, let's figure this out as well, is you know, another thing to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not easy, but I think the reason why it was frustrating is because I was writing this YAML and then I was like, okay, this job that I'm adding, it's gonna run in the context of this pipeline. And then I run it and then I see that like actually it's like running detached and I don't know why, you know? And there's like no feedback or there's no trace. There's nothing that tells me why this particular job that I think that it's running under a stage is running detached, you know? So I don't know. Maybe it's me having that problem, but that was and is pretty frustrating that like I have something in my head and it doesn't perform or like doesn't get translated into what I'm thinking and building, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Dimitri, did you have any questions around the process of the story mapping? Like maybe someone has an example of story mapping that they've done earlier that you would like to share with via link or take 2 minutes?
That would be nice, to be honest. If anybody have done story mapping before and they have an example of how they went from the initial story map towards figuring out what the first MVC is, and you know how they prioritize different parts of the story map to be, you know, ideated upon first, that would be a welcome thing to look into or have an example of. Though at the same time, there is some examples within that, you know, original article, and there's plenty of examples on the internet. It would be nice to have a GitLab specific one.
Maybe, Dimitri, maybe you can do a shout out in the UX channel on Slack. Maybe somebody from other stage groups done that. I would love to see as well.
Sounds good. I will do that. Then nothing further from me here. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Dimitri, for presenting. If maybe someone wants to add anything, otherwise, we'll maybe give this 15 minutes back. Please provide some ideas to the mural board that Dimitri shared.
Oh, I just wanted to share something quickly.
Sure.
So let me just share my screen quickly. This is like a 1 minute thing. This guy. Okay, so last week I was working on like kind of like coming up with like an initial version of like our CI/CD testing project. So basically, as you guys know, like we usually need to go and test CI/CD functionality and like see how things work, and like it's fine to have projects that do what we are trying to test. So I'm trying to come up with like that configuration and everything. So it's still very rough, but my goal is to basically build something that everyone on this group, on this stage, can use, and like anyone who needs to kind of like trigger a particular a particular testing case, they can do it like through this project, right? So right now it's like very simple. Right now, like the way that it works is that you just click here, and then you change this file to something else, and then you commit that, and you commit that, and you stage that, and yeah, whatever. And then I submit this merge request, and then the pipeline is going to run for that. Of course, I already have a pipeline running there. So it's a simple pipeline, but it's a pipeline that also has a review app. So because that's kind of like part of the things that I want to test, review apps, and like there's many things that I want to add to this. But the problem is that I don't know exactly what you guys want to test. So I was wondering if you guys can just go to this thing and open issues saying like, oh, I want to test this thing. I want to test this thing. I want to be able to do these things. Yeah, just brainstorm through the issues. And then I can take some time to look into how to like incorporate this into the project and find ways that we can always kind of like trigger like the cases that we want to trigger. Does that make sense?
This is amazing, Juan. Thanks so much for doing that. 2 comments. Maybe you can add this to the CI/CD design review document. This thing, so we don't forget to add our ideas. And also curious if you maybe have recorded how you did set this up, or like curious if you could be able to redo the same steps for setting this up. That would be amazing also.
I will do that, and I'm gonna add all those things to this project too. So videos on how like how I write the YAML file, because I learned a lot about that last week. That's why I was giving my comments before about like how I was frustrated with the linting and all the stuff. But yeah, so basically my idea, so like the vision for this is like, for instance, like if you have like I'm just gonna say like one example, but like you want to run like you change these to something else, right? And then let's say you wanna you have a case in which you need let me think about, you need to run like a detached pipeline, for instance, right? So you run like, I already have like something working for this, but like my idea is that anything that you write here, like we can have keywords, so you can say like, oh, multi-pipeline, or like detach, or like fail the pipeline, anything. Just have like some keywords here that you put on the title of the MR, and then the pipeline is gonna do whatever you're asking the pipeline to do. So like, show me a failed pipeline, and then the pipeline will fail. And I already tested this last week a little bit, and I know how to do it, and it works decently well. So that's basically where I want to get to, like basically we can create the repo here, and then we can have like a list of all the ways that you can trigger the pipeline in different ways, like the CI in different ways,
Do you know about the existing project of GitLab examples where they kind of try this? The problem with having it within one project is that certain CI/CD settings, which are complete project settings, will influence the way certain pipelines are going to be shown, right? If it's going to be a certain merge strategy or something like that, or certain approvers are going to be active versus not, or all these kind of things will have an effect. So my first thoughts towards this is that is why the original GitLab examples group which has all these different kind of projects in there needed to have multiple projects in order to showcase all the different scenarios of CI.
Yeah, I think we can do that too. I mean, like, I think that the idea of this project or like projects is to have a place where we are testing things that are specific to us, right? Like sometimes I have a need to see like testing, like failed tests, you know, like failed tests in a project, right? And it takes me like literally like 20 minutes to find like something that has like a failed particular test, or like a code climate degradation, for instance. That's one that I always need to check out and I never find, you know, like when the code coverage goes down and there's a report about that. I always try to find reports, MRs that in which that happened, and I never find any of those. So I think the idea here is to like things that are very specific to our stage, right? Things that are like, oh, I want to see degraded coverage. I want to see, you know, like children pipelines. I want to see any of those things. And like then we can explore to see if it's possible within the context of these, or we can create more projects. Of course, this is just a start, but I think like if we can brainstorm a little bit just by adding issues to this project, like, oh, we should try this, we should try that, then we can like, as a team, we can explore to see how to do that.
That was an original goal for this project indeed, when I was creating it, to enable us to set up things and like understand how the tool works and the new functionality works, and also test things. So.
For sure. So I think that's why like the idea of the videos is pretty good. I mean, I'm gonna definitely record those videos and add those videos to the repo as well.
That's good. I pasted the link towards the repository I mentioned inside
Nice.
of the documents. So
yeah, I was gonna ask for that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Juan, for sharing this. This is great. Looking forward to see how this will go further. And of course, it would be interesting for me to also try this out, setting up things. Pretty awesome. If no one has anything to add, then we can close the session. All right. Thanks, Juan. Thanks, Dimitrie. Thanks, everyone. Chat soon.